and walks through the abandoned streets and crumbling buildings in a hazmat suit. She breaks a lock to enter the county library, grabs a few books, and quickly silences the alarm on her suit as it goes off. Pushing her cart loaded with supplies, she heads back along the road and climbs through the mountains. At the top of a hill, her dog Pharaoh runs to greet her, exhausted, and removes her mask, relieved to be home. Back at her house, she thoroughly washes and scrubs herself, removing any possible contamination. That night, she sleeps alone until she calls Pharaoh to join her on the bed for comfort. The next morning, she wraps chains around the fences surrounding her property, a clear sign that she lives in isolation. She eats dinner alone, speaking only to her dog. The following morning, and walks through the woods with Pharaoh, keeping an eye on trail markers. She comes across an abandoned wagon left on the road. Pharaoh runs toward it and follows. Suddenly, the dog spots someone at the corner of a street. And Pharaoh hide in the woods and observe a man in a hazmat suit pulling the wagon behind him. They follow the man from a distance. He walks along the road, then suddenly stops, removes his hazmat suit, and shouts with relief. Pharaoh bolts toward him and rushes after the dog. She tracks the man to a nearby waterfall and sees him standing in the water. Cautiously, she warns him to get out, telling him the water comes from outside the valley and could be dangerous. Startled, the man points a gun and fires a warning shot. He demands to know where the others are, but assures him she's alone and begs him again to step out of the water. Panicked, he scrambles out, returns to his cart, and fumbles with a needle. He tries to inject himself, but his hands shake too much. He asks Anne to do it. He introduces himself as John. She collects water from his cart and helps him wash, scrubbing his skin with a brush and apologizing for the roughness. Back at her home, she helps him up the stairs and lays him down on a bed to rest. The next day, she goes through his wagon and finds a photo of him with a woman, but she quietly places it back. And checks his temperature, brings him food, and feeds him broth while he rests. At night, she hears a noise and checks on him. He's shivering, so she places a towel on his forehead. The next morning, she checks his pulse and gives him another injection. Kneeling beside the bed, she prays to God, promising to serve him if he spares John's life. She walks to the chapel and worships in solitude. As Anne continues her daily routines, John begins to recover. Later, she helps him outside for some fresh air. She tells him her father always said they were blessed by the valley, and it was their duty to keep the farm running. John speculates that the unique weather patterns and the ridge might protect the area from radiation. Curious, he asks why she's alone, and explains that her family left to search for other survivors, and her younger brother, David, was supposed to stay with her. But he snuck away 2 weeks later, also trying to find them. She shows John a photo of her 14-year-old brother. John offers a quiet apology. She gives him a brief hug and walks back inside. He studies the photo again, his expression uneasy. Later, he slowly walks down the hall and sees a room lit by candlelight, and wishes him good night as he enters his own room. Watching her through the window, he sees her working in the garden. The next day, John visits the library, flips through a Bible dictionary, and takes notes from another book. While Anne works in the field, John walks out to observe. "I'm not here to work, just watching," he says, and reminds him he shouldn't be outside in his condition. He asks about the field. She explains it's meant for soybeans, but the rocks need to be cleared first. When he asks why she doesn't use the truck, she tells him she ran out of gas last year, and the store pumps don't work without electricity. He tells her that fuel can be pumped manually. Intrigued, Anne goes to the old gas pump and uses a set of instructions to get it working. She hooks up a jug and watches with amazement as the fuel begins to flow. Excited, she jumps and cheers, while John watches her through the scope of a rifle. That night, before they eat, Anne prays while he sits awkwardly. She thanks God for the small blessings and asks if John had been up north when the disaster began. John says he was in a government bunker, working as a research engineer. She's impressed to learn he's a scientist. He tells her he helped design the suit he was wearing, one of the reasons he's still alive. Though he admits the suits weren't made for long-term use. They weren't supposed to be used this long. It's beat up now. And asks why he left the bunker. He says what he wanted in life wasn't there. When she wonders if he left to find his wife, he seems confused. She explains that she saw the photo in his wagon. He says it was just someone from a long time ago. Honestly, he says, I think I was looking for a place like this without even knowing it. Later, Anne swims and fishes in the pond while John cooks their catch over a small fire. They eat together. She explains that the pond water comes from the same underground source as their well, something her father once told her. John nods in agreement. She talks about how she nearly starved and froze during the last winter. Wishing they could freeze fish for the next one, she mentions the generator, how it broke down. John is surprised there's a generator. He checks it and tells her the engine is fried, and blames herself, but he reassures her. It's just old. She jokingly offers a solution, and to her surprise, John agrees. It's a good idea. Come on. They drive to the waterfall, and John explains his plan to build a hydroelectric power system, and hesitates, concerned about radiation, but John reassures her that the water's safe, despite being radioactive. Back at the farm, he suggests dismantling the chapel to reuse its wood and parts for the new energy system. Anne refuses. Her father built that chapel, and to her, it represents their survival and faith. John seems disappointed, but suggests maybe God placed the chapel there, so they could survive in other ways too. Still, and insists on keeping it. That night, Pharaoh growls near the door. The next morning, Anne notices a few eggs are missing. She continues working the fields. When John urges her to stop for the day, she insists on finishing the work alone. Meanwhile, John walks into the abandoned store and later, she finds him there, drunk. When she tries to help him back to his room, he snaps, pushes her against the wall, and yells that he doesn't need help. She quickly backs away. The next morning, he tries to apologize, but Anne brushes it off. While she's playing piano in the chapel, she thinks she sees a shadow. She later asks John if he wants her to stop playing, but he seems confused. That night, they share wine at dinner, dance together, and even kiss. Anne removes her clothes in his bedroom, but John stops her, saying that it would change things and that they have time. He asks her to stay, and she agrees. In the garage, he shares more about his projects. One day, Pharaoh leads Anne into the woods, where they meet a man standing on a hill. He introduces himself as Caleb and politely asks for a glass of water, promising he means no harm. Back at the house, John approaches with a rifle, and vouches for Caleb. Caleb admits he stole an egg and explains he survived by hiding in a mine when the radiation struck. When food ran out, he came out. John warns that he may have been exposed and offers to help him recover before heading south. Caleb is grateful and agrees to rest for a couple of days. And John talk about Caleb's day. She brings his bag inside, and later they all share a meal on the porch. And Caleb pray, while John stays quiet. During dinner, John tells a story about a sick boy who stole from him, begged to be killed, and was left behind. Caleb shares his own traumatic story. He was trapped in the mine with 4 others. A fight broke out, and only he made it out alive, and shows Caleb to his room. Later, John confesses to and that he believes the sick boy might have been her brother. She quietly forgives him. As days pass, Anne drives the tractor while John shows Caleb around the farm. They discuss Caleb's plan to head south. While hunting turkeys, John explains his idea for hydroelectric power and mentions Anne's reluctance to tear down the chapel. After they bring the turkey home, Caleb brings up the plan again and this time, and agrees. Together, they begin dismantling the chapel and start building the water wheel. John watches as Anne and Caleb grow closer. They run power lines from the waterfall to the house using the tractor. One day, Anne and Caleb discuss faith. She asks how he could help tear down the chapel if he believed in God. Caleb says the place was holy because of her, and faith is what keeps people alive, not just buildings. They return to find John has completed the water wheel's frame. That night, John tells Anne she's free to explore her feelings for Caleb. She tries to object, but he cuts her off, saying he won't stand in her way. Another day, Anne asks John if he believes in Caleb's story about a town in Anson. John admits he doesn't. Later, the trio installs the water wheel in the creek. That evening, they celebrate with wine and dancing. John quietly steps back, letting Anne and Caleb dance together. At the pond, they play a game where they retrieve a bottle John tossed into the water. Anne and Caleb take turns diving, laughing. As they walk home, John tells Anne he loves her. Later, Anne goes to John's room, looking for comfort, but he doesn't wake. She quietly leaves and joins Caleb in the bathroom. They get intimate. The next morning, Caleb walks in while John is making breakfast. There's tension between them. They talk about finishing the water wheel, and Caleb agrees to help. While working, John tells Caleb he told Anne to do whatever it took to keep him around. Caleb accuses him of being jealous and questions if John's lying. They argue about Anson, whether it's real or just a false hope. As they install the wheel, Caleb slips once and nearly falls. John grabs the rope. On the second slip, both men lock eyes, tension thick, but John holds on. Later, John returns to the house alone. He tells Anne that Caleb left for Anson and took the protective suit with him. He claims Caleb said and could have all his things. Distraught, Anne runs into the hills searching for Caleb, but finds no sign of him. Back at the farm, John quietly works inside the broken chapel. Later, Anne sees the lights come on, the fridge, a lamp, and realizes the electricity is working. She rushes to find John and heads to the barn. Inside, she finds the old organ and a few church items. She sits and plays a hymn. John enters and sits behind her on the pew, smiling gently as she continues to play. So that's it. Hope you enjoy the story. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more videos.